Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Zach Bitter. Welcome, everyone. If you enjoy the show, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast listening platform and YouTube. You can now also check out the full video episode on X. Please also consider sharing your favorite episodes and leaving a review. If you do that and tag me or send me a screenshot, I will enter you in a monthly raffle for a free 30-minute consultation with me. For full episode details, including notes, timestamps, transcripts, and the show Patreon page, and other ways to support the show, please head over to my website at zachbitter.com. There you can find all my coaching services, including some new offerings for 2025. You can also sign up for my Substack newsletter, where I have been publishing my training journal weekly, as well as other topic-based posts. If you have any questions or feedback, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website or at hpopodcast@gmail.com. A big thanks to Element, Delta G Ketones, Kerans, and Maui Nui Venison for supporting the podcast. A full description of how I use these products can be found at the end of the episode. Discounts, promotions, and details can also be found in the show notes and at the end of each episode. Delta G Ketones is my go-to exogenous ketone source. You can get 20% off at deltagketones.com when you use promo code BITTER20. Check out my full description of how I use Delta G Ketones at the end of the episode. Yeah, it was. I was excited to chat with you. It's actually kind of funny. At the beginning of the year, I started using Krantz, and I'm building up for a 100-miler in June that I'm going to try to take a pretty big swing at. So I've just dialing everything in at the start of the year. I started working with them, and they were just telling me about some of the athletes on the roster. And like, you know what? Who knew? And we were just talking about the podcast as well. And they were just like, you know, you should check out Sam Harvey. He seems like he'd be a good guest for your podcast. And then when they said that, I was like, oh, that's awesome, because I was following the Backyard Ultra that you did when you, Harvey Lewis, and I'm blanking on the third gentleman's name, all kind of had like had such an epic throwdown. And I wouldn't say that that type of event wasn't already on the map in the ultra world, but that event really pushed it up in terms of like people, I think, starting to really wrap their head around like, oh man, how far can people push these backyard ultras if you get some competitive pressure inside of them?
No, I totally agree. It was a crazy event. Big unknown for me, and I'm not sure if I will ever run a race where I kind of pushed the needle as far as I did on that one. Like, it was going into the unknown, and man, I would say that's one of the closest points to death I've ever been. Like, I lost more than 10% of my body weight, and I was not in a good way for a very long time.
Yeah, I wonder, you probably have thought about this, but like, had you been in that race and it was just you versus two other guys kind of pushing, like how much sooner maybe you would have pulled the plug on it?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like I was going to that race to set a world record, so I knew it was the time and the place, that all the pieces were in the right place. Like Phil Gore, best in Australia, Harvey Lewis, best in America at the time, still best in America, and then me, best in New Zealand, which wasn't saying much at that point in time. Like I was number one in New Zealand, but I was still like ranked 60th or 70th in the world, so I hadn't really like gotten up there as far as my loop count was concerned. So my PB was at the teams championship, or the world teams championship the year before, and that was a 46 loop PB.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into Dead Cow Gully that year, I did 101, so I more than doubled my PB. So it was just a matter of trusting my processes, trusting all my systems, and trusting my body, and just knowing that, righto, just replicate what I already do, loop after loop, and yeah, take it to 100 or more.
Yeah, it's such an interesting structure to me, because obviously you got to complete the loop within the hour, but you don't really get any incentive for going faster than you need to. So it's like you kind of got to give yourself a little time, especially when you're getting into like the number of days that you guys were out there, to take care of yourself between loops. But it's also one of those things where it's got like elements of some of the other ultra marathon events, but it also has like this, I think like almost like a little bit of a reduction in what is required from a top end speed standpoint. And then
Oh, yes,
whatever, yeah,
absolutely.
but then just like the mental and physical resilience component of ultra marathon, it just like really zones in on that aspect of the sport because I mean, you got to deal with so much when you're out there for 400 and what was it? How many miles did you guys go? Is an insane amount. Or kilometers is
Yeah,
probably what you're thinking. Like
yeah,
600 some
kilometers.
kilometers.
677 kilometers was the world record that I matched at the time, and uh, yeah, I the speed factor and the 4.167 miles or the 6.7 kilometer loop an hour really reins it in on a speed perspective, and also allows for a very diverse range of runners. Like, you do have some super athletes doing this sport. Like, you have some fast guys, but then you also have some guys that just, they're older, they're wiser, they're more experienced, and they're happy to just churn out very slow laps for days and days at a time. So you have that full spectrum. And I think it's one of those things, kind of like maybe 24-hour, 48-hour, and 6-day races, where you have these guys that are just much more stubborn and withered by life, and they're just happy to chug along and suck it up and not go very fast. And so, like, some of these guys that like I've run with at the World Championship, they are running some very slow loops for days at a time, and as a result, they're not getting any sleep. And so, like, you get 4 days down the track of no sleep, and also like taxing your body with running for great distances. And yeah, the mind starts to fall apart because obviously you haven't got that recovery component. But then there's other runners like myself, like Phil Gore in particular, where we like to run faster. He's been running fast loop backyard ultras for a very long time, and I've kind of adapted to that, learning that 10 to 15 or even 20-minute sleep is much nicer than like 30-second to 60-second micro naps for days at a time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a much more effective way of recovery. So we're willing to physically tax our body a little bit harder in order to get that
Mm-hmm.
greater rest component.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. I was out at the Cocodona 250 last year. I wasn't running it, but I was coaching some athletes that were there. And then after the race, I was talking to Mike McKnight and Jeff Browning,
Mm.
who've, they haven't done any backyards that I'm aware of, but they've done some of these 200 milers. And they were saying, I think it was Mike was telling me, he's like, you sort of have like three types of naps. There's like the 60-second or less, there's the 15 to 20 minute, and then there's like the 60 to 90 minute. And he's like, they all sort of have their purpose, but as you go up, like he was, the way he was saying is like, if you decide to do the really short one, like the 30-second, 60-second nap, you might feel better after that, but it returns back to what you were before very quickly. The 15-20 kind of has a little bit of a longer effect, and then the 69 has a really long effect. So it's not necessarily saving time by going with really short naps, because you might have to end up taking a bunch of them versus being able to stave it off a little bit longer with something slightly longer. Obviously, in the context of what you're doing, you're probably limited to 15 minutes or less, I would imagine, given just you have to start the loop every hour. But I would be curious about how you kind of plan sleeping within that.
Yeah, really, it really depends. Like, I think I've become much better at sleeping. I used to religiously run 52-minute loops, and that would give me 8 minutes to kind of come in, sleep, drink, eat, change shoes or socks, do anything that I needed to do, and then get back out there. And I worked out that like 8 minutes is more than sufficient to do everything that you need to do. And that's how I ran the 101 loops. But then during that 101 loops, like, I knew I was tired. Like, your body's falling apart, your mind's falling apart. And I think it was like on the fourth night, I experimented with like a couple of faster loops, and I went from having like 1 or 2 minute naps to, I think I might have had a 10 or at least 10, maybe even 15 minutes. And I woke up from that. And you know how like when you're running at night and you've got your headlight on and maybe you're tired, you lose a bit of depth perception. You can't see all of the little minute details in the road or in the track. And I found like immediately after I'd had that much longer sleep, I like woke up and I had depth perception. Like everything was in like high resolution. I was like, oh, whoa, that was effective. And like, that was my turning point. I was like, oh, I want to run fast loops from now on. Like, this is so much better for my brain, for my body. So yeah, I've gone from being like a 52-minute loop guy and I raced and won a lot of backyards doing that, to now, like, provided the course allows for it, because obviously like a gnarly course with lots of undulation and twists and turns is, you're going to have to run it a bit slower, or you're not going to be able to run it as fast. I will try and run like kind of in the mid 40s, and then that allows me a good bit of rest. I found that at Biggs, which is the World Championship at Laz's place in Tennessee, the day loop is about as gnarly as I have ever seen in a backyard ultra. Like, it's single track, it's twists, it's turns, it's rocks, it's like you're jumping off things, and like you've got to be locked in. There's no switching off. Like you've got to be looking where you're going the whole time, and it's quite mentally taxing to do so. And even if you're locked in, you're probably still going to hit the dirt or hit the rocks at some point. Like, we had guys in the last World Championship like hitting their heads like all covered in blood because they'd hit themselves on the rocks. So that's a slower day loop. It might be in like the late 40s to well into the 50s for those loops. But then you get onto the night course and it's a very, very smooth Tennessee country road. It's a long out and back, and I think my slowest loop on the day loop at Biggs was 56 minutes, and it was the slowest loop I'd ever done, so I was getting a little bit panicky. But it was the last loop of the fourth day, and everybody was pretty stuffed at that point. But then the next loop, we went on to the first loop of the night, and I went from running a 56-minute loop to running a 39-minute loop. And then I got at least 15 minutes of sleep, and then time to also eat and drink and do everything that I needed after that. So that's kind of my scenario. But the balancing point is trying to go fast enough to get a bit of rest and recuperation, and maybe just have a sit down, reset, eat, hydrate, do everything you need to do. But then also not going so fast that you're going to destroy yourself mechanically, and then like kind of have a strain or an injury that's eventually going to be exacerbated over the course of 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah, that's all fascinating. Do you think the reason you were so much faster on that first loop of the night route on day 4 was because you had just kind of been like, you kind of get lulled into a bit of a sense of or maybe it's a lack of sense of urgency after you've been doing something over and over, real repetitive, and then you get some change stimulus. It can be something super trivial. Then all of a sudden, like, you realize how much energy you actually have, and it was just like kind of breaking the monotony of whatever it was you're doing before that resulted in that. I think you said 38-minute lap.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, there's a multitude of factors. Like, the novelty's a big one. Because, like, eventually you get bored. Eventually, like, I don't know, you might forget what you're doing. Like, there's a number of people that over like the course of 4 or 5 days, they forget what they're doing. They forget why they're there. And yeah, so just changing onto the night loop, it's quite nice. It's a lot more forgiving on the body. It's quite enjoyable to run that first night loop at Biggs because the sun is just setting. So like, you're on a nice open country road looking over meadows. Like, there was a harvester working in the field on the nights or the days that we were running, and so it's quite picturesque. It's just, it's an enjoyable place to be. So it's a lot easier to run that, where you get onto that day loop and slog it out for, I think it was, we were doing 11 hours on the day loop and 13 hours on the night loop. I think it was, just because we were going, the days were getting shorter and we were sitting in fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's my bad. I was thinking of it the other way around. When you said you did the 38-minute loop, my mind went to you jumping onto the trail section versus the road section. That makes a lot more sense that it was going from the day trail to the night road one, just from just going faster in general on a path like that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of variables in this stuff. I'd be curious too, just like nutritionally, what you're doing this whole time, because I imagine there's stuff that you do that you're like, all right, I know this sort of works for me. But then when you're out there for that long, there has to be a little bit of just kind of impromptu-ness with, all right, well, that kind of actually looks good right now, or I'm craving that right now. How did you even begin to plan nutrition and hydration and all that stuff for something this long and kind of complex?
Yeah, honestly, I made it up for a fair period of time. And I guess I had like it right to a pretty decent base level to get me through, and so like I knew that I had to have fluid and electrolytes every hour, but as far as like volumes, as far as like actual targets went, like I didn't really know. So for a good number of backyard ultras, right into like running the world record, I was just doing like 500 ml, like a soft flask with some drink powder in it. And yeah, that was giving me maybe like 20 grams of carbohydrate and like, I don't know, 150 milligrams of sodium or 200 milligrams of sodium. And then I was eating food on the side and trying to like pretty regularly eat food, but we were like making things up. Like there was all sorts of like different concoctions going down the throat. And it wasn't until like just before I went to Biggs that I linked up with Kushla, my dietitian, and she like broke down everything that I had been eating and drinking in these races. And basically like I was at max hitting what I should have been by about half. Like I was maybe averaging 45 to 50 grams of carbohydrate an hour for like 100 hours for 4+ days at a time. And as far as sodium goes, I was probably like getting a third to a quarter of the amount of sodium that I needed. So hence why my feet and my hands blew up to ridiculous sizes. And also I lost more than 10% of my body weight during that race. But then since then, we've made adaptations and kind of like set targets. In an ideal race, and I think I had a pretty ideal race at the satellite championship or the teams championship that we just had in October gone. And I'll rely on real food for as long as possible. So I'll be eating like a lot of sandwiches, a lot of noodles, a lot of rice. Actual food with like some micronutrients, not just the processed macros, but then also like hitting gels as an option. Like I think I roughly average about 20 to 30 gels, whether it's like a 40-hour backyard ultra right up to like 100-hour backyard ultra. And yeah, just pretty much what we've got it to the point of is I'm hitting like 600 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium every hour. I'm hitting 500 to 1,000 mils of fluid every hour. And then I've obviously got my carb heavy drink mix in that, whatever it may be at the time. And that's typically giving me 50 grams of carbohydrate. So I'm nailing at least 50 grams of carbohydrate via my fluids every hour. But then on top of that, I'm having some real food. And then that's really topping me up to, I think I've worked out that I'm averaging like 83 grams of carbohydrate an hour. I'm having a serving of protein like every 5 or 6 hours, just so I can like help my body repair itself as I'm breaking down all of the tissues as I'm running. I have our friend Curran's, I have them every 5 or 6 hours, and that helps to boost blood flow and help my body like prioritize, well, maybe not prioritize, but improve fat oxidation, so I'm not relying so heavily on my body's glycogen. And yeah, just trying to keep it as diverse as possible, like, yeah, mashed potato, noodles, the savory things, but then also switching on to sweet things. And yeah, just being open to change and open to the palate and not accepting things on the day, because that's a big thing. You're probably aware, doing your really long 100-mile, especially like, yeah, 100 miles in the dome or anything else, your palate may very well decide it doesn't want the things that you've been training with, and then all of a sudden you've got to pivot and adapt really quickly. Otherwise, you're going to start missing your target. So I've had things that I've relied on, like we discovered Idahoan mashed potatoes, like Idahoan instant mashed potatoes that you have in the States. Those are delicious. But I went into Dead Cow Gully 2024, which was my second attempt there, and we were making instant mashed potatoes like from the get-go. We brought a whole heap over with us from our last trip to the States, and found that like I just wouldn't eat any of it. And we're like, oh, what do we do now? So like I went to a diet of like mostly gels for the first 24 hours until like my palate had enough of gels and wanted something savory instead. And that was like, that was a bit of a chaotic moment. We were getting pretty worried, because like it's pretty normal to go off your food after like 24 hours or 48 hours. But if you're like immediately starting to reject your nutrition options within the first day or within the first hours, then yeah, it's a bit worrying, because you're on a slippery slope after that point quite often.
Just a quick reminder that Krantz is my go-to pre-workout supplement for improving blood flow, increasing fat oxidation, reducing muscle damage, and delaying fatigue. Krantz leverages the research on the black currant berry extract to formulate the right dosage. Head over to currantzusa.com. That's CURRANZUSA.com to check them out, as well as all the research outlined. Yeah, it is really interesting when your body just decides, like, yeah, I'm not going to take that anymore. And it's not even always, most people probably had a digestive issue where it's like, okay, I took that in and then I puked or whatever. And I remember the first time I really understood that was actually before I'd ever done an ultra marathon. I was in college, and one of my buddies and I, we went to this pizza place. They had this challenge where if two of you could eat a 12-pound pizza in an hour, you got like $500 or something like that. So we went in to do it. I remember like the first, like I got through like 4 pounds of pizza in like the first 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, I'm just blasting through this. And then all of a sudden I got to this point where I think it was the cheese. It was like I would take a bite and I would be chewing it, and my body physically just wouldn't allow me to swallow it. So I'm just like slowing down grinding to a halt essentially. And I eventually got up to 6 pounds within the hour. But like, it was like majority of it was just like in that beginning of that, before my body started just saying no more. And I think there's kind of something similar to that with like because I could have eaten pretty much anything else. If you would have handed me like a bowl of ice cream or something like that, I probably could have eaten it without too much trouble. And I think it's just that texture, flavor, profile difference. And you're right. I think if you can go in with the best laid plan of what worked in the past, but if your body just decides for whatever reason, you know what, I don't really want that anymore, you need to have something. And I think I like what you said about just like the variance between kind of salty, savory versus sweet, because I think those are the two big ones. I'll usually have something where like in most of my races, they're short enough where I can get away with quite a bit of engineered fuel and quite a bit of monotony, but there's always a point where it's just like you get a little sick of it. And then if that's like a drink or a gel based product, then it's like a crunchy potato chip or cracker or something that's salty, crunchy, savory versus sweet, liquidy. It just hits so much differently, and it almost like unlocks your ability to eat again. And I think that's always a big kind of breakthrough for ultra runners when they kind of get to that balance of variety to the degree where now they can consistently eat over the course of the event versus having big lulls of opportunity lost from just eating nothing for a while.
Yeah, I think novelty is key. Is like what I tell my runners that I coach, it's like there's no such thing as too many options in a backyard ultra. Like, go shopping and buy all the silly things that you're like, oh, that looks tasty. Just treat yourself. Like, grab it off the shelf, and if you don't eat it during the race, like, it's gonna go in in the cupboard. It's gonna go in the fridge anyway after the race. So it's not like it's gonna get thrown away. And if you've got all these crazy options, you might only use an option once. But if you use it once and it goes down and it stays down and it acts as fuel, then perfect. That was a good buy. That was a good option for you on the day. It's nice to just like go through the race and be like, oh, that's tasty. Like, just constantly having new, novel tastes, textures, and yeah, a lot of it's about mouthfeel as well. So like trying not to like run for 48 hours and just having dry stuff all the time. Like, you want it to be like soft and moist on the palate, because like it's already an arduous task. And and again, like flavors with your gels and with your electrolyte. I don't turn up with one flavor of electrolyte and one flavor of gel. Like, I can guarantee you within like about 3 or 4 hours, you're going to hate whatever that product is. So like, turn up and have 6 different drink flavors, have 6 different gel flavors. And then that way it's going to keep it enjoyable.
Yeah, no doubt. The other thing I thought when I saw you guys put up that performance was, man, I wonder if these guys are got like a 6-day on their calendar at any time, because I just think like when you start getting to that duration and now you apply it to a course where you get to manipulate how long you stay out and when you sleep, like how many miles could you rack up over 6 days? And like, I remember I talked to some people about it, and some people are like, well, sometimes it's just like people are better at certain things. Maybe they don't have any interest in it. Maybe it's just different. I don't know. I think you probably crush a 6-day. Have you got any plans of something like that in the future?
My little ADHD brain is always like, I want to do this one and that one. I mean, like any ultra runner, we're greedy and we want all these different adventures and experiences, but you can only do so many because they're so taxing on the body. I am interested in the longer stuff, but at the same time, I want to maximize the amount of events that I'm able to compete in at any one point in time. Like, I think I raced 11 ultramarathons in 2024 alone, and that was super fun. And you start doing these like 6-day or 1,000-mile or 2,000-mile runs, then immediately that really limits your calendar, because you've got to focus into those, and then you've got a big recovery time afterwards. But we've got Dead Cow Gully, or Australian Backyard Masters, coming up again in June. So that's the same. It's the same venue and the same event that we ran 2 years ago to get the world record. And I rate that course as being possibly the best for setting the world record, like globally. It's flat. It's open, so like it's not windy. It's not taxing on the body. On the mind, you can pretty much just switch off and run. And then, because it's the Masters event this year, you've got a lot of big runners. You've got Harvey Lewis. You've got Phil Gore. I think we've got Miriam Gerrits, who, like, all these guys are in the top 5, top 10 in the world. A number of other guys like Ryan Crawford and James Blanton, who are the other best guys in Australia. I'm going there, and the current world record sitting at 110 hours, which is like, more or less 5 days. I'm thinking that we will run 6 days, or it's my hope that we will run the full 6 days on that course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just such an interesting element to this event too, is there is no finish line. There's a finish line that creates itself eventually, but like if you're having a duel or you're throwing down with a few people on 100-miler, or even a 6-day event or a timed event, there's this like tangible stop there where you're just like, okay, that's where this thing ends. And if I get there before they do, then I win But with this, it's just like psychologically, you don't really have that piece to the puzzle in there to maybe grab onto at times. So is there anything you do mentally to prep differently for that? Is it sort of like, all right, I can't think about that because I can't control it, or is it something that is on the back of your mind throughout?
I mean, it's definitely on the back of your mind, especially like for me, when I step foot in one of these backyard ultras, like I don't just want to win it. I want it to go as far as it physically can go. Like I don't want to just win. I want to be tested, and I can only be tested if we can go really far. So, my approach to these races has become very different to what it once was. I guess I've gone from being like the unproven youngster who wanted to kind of be a big name in the sport and do big things. So I was a bit of a cutthroat runner. I was there. I was the lone wolf. I'd be happy to not talk to anyone for four or so days at a time and just go out there and tear throats out. But now I kind of understand, like, I can go for over 100 hours and my target is 150 plus hours. In order for me to go that far, everybody else needs to go that far. Like I need people there with me. The more people that you have further into the race, the easier it is to go that far, because like you run for a couple of days and there's only 2 guys left in the race, it becomes a bit monotonous and lonely, where at least if you've got company of like, I don't know, half a dozen to a dozen people going really far, then you're pretty sure that you can get a really decent distance. So yeah, now I think the sport itself has evolved a lot more. Like there's a lot more camaraderie. There's a lot less people like out for themselves. Yes, they're out for themselves because they want a good result, but at the same time they know they can achieve a good result, but at the same time be working with their competitors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. It's one of those things where, especially like maybe in the early days of the backyard, you could get in there and put up a huge number relative to what was being done by yourself. But now I think when you're getting into that spot where it's like you've gone through multiple nights of no real sleep, you need someone to push you along, someone else to get out there and say, okay, well, if they're doing it, I'm going to do it. I'm kind of curious about like the gamesmanship within that too, where I remember watching the live stream when you, Harvey and Gore were going at it. And it seemed like Harvey was maybe trying to like run really fast at the start of the loop. And I was like, I wonder if he's trying to like make these guys think like he's got a lot in the tank and they may as well give up because he's going to go at least one more. So we're all past the world record at this point. Is that something that you see happening, or is that just maybe his typical characteristic?
Harvey's chaos. Like Harvey, I often say, is the closest thing to a real life alien that I've ever met. Like he's a unique character. I love him. Like he's just like a ray of sunshine at all times. But yeah, he'll throw random stuff in, and I mean, like, despite being like the most lovely guy you've ever met, at the same time, like he's a cutthroat warrior. Like he'll get out there and he'll throw down, and he's like he'll play mind games, and those fast starts were a lot of mind games. Like me and Harvey had kind of run a lot of the last I think the 4th day, or maybe even the 3rd and the 4th day together. And Phil was kind of like running his fast loops out by himself. And so like Harvey had said, like, you and me are going to win this together. Like it'll be me and you last 2. And so he was, at that point, he was messing with Phil. He was like, oh, well, Phil's been running fast. I'm just going to run faster than him to start off with. So that was just trying to throw something at him and see how he reacts. Cause that's a lot of the backyard is like when it comes down to mind games, then people will start, I don't know, showing that they're stronger than they are. That's how a lot of backyards are won, is everybody's hurting. But if you turn up in the corral at the start of the 89th loop and you look like you've just got out of bed and you're about to run your first loop, and the other guy's like, oh, I'm falling apart, and you see this guy and he's just a picture of health, like that can be enough to break you.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, there's so much stuff. I've started doing a, a few podcasts on kind of the history of ultra marathons. So I've had some guys on that are like sort of historians and
I've
record
noticed
keepers, and yeah,
your recent series of episodes has had quite a multi-day kind of
yeah.
vibe to it.
Uh-huh. It's such an interesting aspect, and I'm just like eternally like interested in the element of how the sport is today, and kind of, and this is partly just my own ignorance and the way I got introduced to the sport, where like the first ultra I did was a 50 miler on a trail, and I had no clue that there were really a whole lot else outside of trail running and stuff like that. And then like, 100 milers. And I guess I knew that there was some other stuff out there because I had read Dean Karnasis's book and knew that he was at least doing like bad water and running like 300 miles or 350 miles or whatever it was, just consistent consecutively. But I thought that stuff was maybe a little less structured. And I was like completely ignorant to the fact that like 100 years prior, there is this 6-day event that was like one of like the top sports in the world at the time. And people were just going back and forth at that and doing all sorts of crazy stuff to see who could go further, and putting up numbers that are like respectable today, like more than
Oh,
respectable in a lot of cases.
I would say more than respectable,
Yeah.
especially like with what they were fueling on back then, which like, I mean, like
Yeah.
there were some guys that were like going high carb. There were some guys that were drinking honey and stuff, but like there are other guys that were, or a lot of them that were drinking beef tea, like,
Beef tea. Yeah.
or and lots of stimulants, like lots of
Yeah.
stimulants,
Hmm.
and then running in, I don't know, woolen work socks and
Yeah.
leather
Leather
boots.
shoes. Yeah. I found I was reading this book that has a bunch of details on it, and it said something to the degree of like, I think it was a guy who was trying to go 5,000 miles in 100 days or something like that. And I remember looking at the date, and then someone mentioned like, oh, you know what? They didn't even invent like a rubber shoe sole until like 7 or 8 years after that. So this guy's out there in like some like leather based like soled shoe out just trying to
Yeah,
go
I can
go
only imagine.
their feet. Yeah.
Yeah, like their feet, like the tendinopathies, all of
Yeah.
the bursitis that those guys must have just run through.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts to think about. So yeah, that's been just an exciting kind of history lesson for me, and just learning more about the sport and diving into it and getting excited about some of that stuff too, because I've done basically single day stuff, and I do want to get into some multi-day stuff eventually, and kind of learning more about it and getting excited is probably the way to do it, because at a certain point you need some motivation to stay out there, I'd imagine. Just a quick reminder that Element Electrolytes is my go-to electrolyte source. They are offering a free sample pack with purchase for all HPO listeners. Just head over to drinklmnt.com/HPO and check out my full description of how I use Element at the end of the episode.
Hmm. Would you ever consider doing a backyard?
Yeah, I'd probably do a backyard. I think I'd probably do, if I really got, I think the one that really interests me the most right now is probably the 6 day. Just because it's like, it's a little more defined. It's got the history aspect to it. It's probably just, again, something I've been exposed to now more from just looking into this stuff a bit. But I'm also like trying to be reasonable about it too, and realizing like it's probably not a great idea to make my first multi-day thing to be a 6 day. I should maybe do something that's, I mean, maybe a backyard is the move, because it's sort of, I can sort of create what I want out of it to some degree. I mean, you can do it with a 6 day too, I guess, but you probably feel maybe like if you sign up for a 6 day and then you're just kind of like hanging out the last 3 days, that feels a lot less maybe purposeful than like, all right, I'm gonna do a backyard, find out where my limit is, and then stop there and like, okay, that's the benchmark. I got a multi-day experience, hopefully a multi-day experience, and then I can kind of build from there. But yeah, I mean, I'm open to stuff. So like after this conversation, I'll probably be more interested in backyards just because of what you've told me.
Yeah, I think the backyard, the weird sport that it is, it's extremely useful within our field, like within ultra marathon running. It's a very good entry to ultramarathon running for people who are just starting their journey, because rather than kind of being set off on 50 to 100 miles of carry your stuff and go out into the wilderness and survive, it's you're just running a loop, and then that way you don't have to carry your stuff. You've got people looking after you. You're running shoulder to shoulder with maybe 150 other people, and then people will quite often set PBs. As far as distance goes, I think, was it last year or the year before, and for consecutive years, Backyard Ultra has had more 24-hour 100-mile finishers globally than any other combination of 100-mile races in the world have had 24-hour finishes. So, yeah, it's cool from that aspect, but then it's also a great way of testing your mind, because, sure, like you and me prior to backyarding would have been used to running for long periods of time and great distances, but then then you throw in the factor of having a sit down every hour and having to mentally force yourself to get out of the chair every hour. And there's that part of your mind that says like, no, I don't want to, and you've got to override that. And so it's a nice way of kind of galvanizing your resolve and just like finishing the job. It's slow, and it really, it's not too physically hard, but it also tests your mind to a great degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder about if someone had like a 100-mile goal for 24 hours, if the backyard makes sense, because it almost forces them to pace themselves a little more smart than they maybe would otherwise, because there's just less of that draw to go out guns blazing and then pay dearly the last third and maybe get clipped by like a cutoff or just fall short of the 24-hour time frame, when like, someone who's targeting like a sub 24 for 100 miles, they're probably not in the boat there you are, where they're really trying to maximize all sorts of things. Like, okay, I need to get there a little quicker so I can sleep. They're probably, if their goal is to get to 124 hours, they're probably not going to sleep. And in which case, there's no incentive for them to be finishing sooner than like 50, 55 minutes in terms of in the beginning, maybe anyway. So I do wonder about that, just like the whole pacing structure of these 100-milers, and if people are getting a little bit better at it through a backyard because they're painted into a little bit more of a structured strategy.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's definitely that aspect. Like I've got a number of athletes that I've coached over the years that they might be in the 30s. Yeah, they'd be in like the 30 to 35 hour group as far as having done any point to point 100-mile races. But then as soon as you throw them into the backyard ultra, there's a social aspect. So you've got people to chit chat with the whole time. You're not carrying everything that you need on your back. Like you might only be holding a water bottle for the entirety of the loop. And just reining it in speed wise allows them to just chug over and stay disciplined. Because I mean, like the discipline of having to be out there for 6.7 kilometers, 4.2 miles every hour, it forces them to do that distance, where if they're in the 30s or 40s hours for 100-mile racing, but it's all on them to be kind of hitting their paces. Like they can sit down in an aid station for 20 or 30 minutes. And once they sit down in an aid station for 20 or 30 minutes for 14 aid stations at a time, whilst also running pretty slow, then the time just blows out really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point too. And speaking of 100-milers too, I don't want to paint you into a corner of being just this multi-day backyard specialist, because you're quite good at the other ultra distances too. You just recently won the Tarawera 100-mile in February, so you're content with mixing it up with some fast-paced 100-milering as well. What was it like kind of coming in? All right, maybe I should ask, what is your goal when you're doing a race like that? Is the same thing, I just want to go in and try to win this, or is it a means to an end to improve things with the backyard stuff? Is there anything specific about the shorter ultras that you like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I wanted to be a professional athlete from like when I was a teenager, and there was a lot of making things up and trying different sports along the way. And then it was much later in life that I kind of found out that I was pretty good at running, and then like I was almost in my 30s by the time that I decided to throw everything out and just focus on running, with particular ultramarathon running. And when I decided that, I was just like, I want to do it all. So like I had targeted 24 hours, I had targeted the backyard, I had targeted the UTMB series, and I wanted to run 50 to 100 miles to whatever distance, and I wanted to win as much as possible. And yeah, it was kind of like the start of last year that I really staked my claim that I wasn't a one-trick pony and that I could also do 100-mile races. So I came second at Tarawera last year in the 100-mile. I came first in the Kosciuszko 100-mile in Australia in November, and then I came first at Tarawera in February gone. And at that point I've gone from like just wanting to win these races to trying to get up there as being one of the best and one of the most diverse ultramarathon runners in the world. And unfortunately at Tarawera, I really hurt myself. I still got the win, but like I have quite a bad injury currently. And so I was going for the course record. It's hard to define the course record at Tarawera because quite often they have landslides and they have to have course changes, and the courses are quite often very different. But I just decided, like, well, it keeps on changing. Why not just go for the overall course record? And Zach Miller set that in 2023 in a time of 14 hours 41. So I was just like, righto, let's go 14 hours 40. And I attacked that. Had all my pacing strategy set out for that, and I think I could have done it. The only problem was we had quite a strong field of elite athletes, and like four really good runners came over from Japan for the race. One of them being like a 2:13 marathoner, which is much faster than I am, and so I had to be a little bit more strategic in that race. So I was quite aggressive with the pacing. I tried to beat some of the guys up early on, and I made my move with I made my move at the 50K mark. So it meant like I took the lead and broke off, and that meant I had to hold the lead for 110 kilometers, which I did, and it got me the lead. But at the same time, like I have a pretty bad injury as a result, but didn't quite get the course record that I was after, but I still achieved a pretty good time, and it's the first time a Kiwi has won that race, so that was pretty special to me.
Yeah. I mean, the tactics is another interesting aspect to these two, where it's not like, it's just like, I understand like pacing well is going to maximize your finishing time, but it's not necessarily going to de-maximize your competition's finishing time is the way I like to describe it. And like I had a similar race like that at the Road 100-mile championships in 2021, where they had to push it back a couple months due to the COVID stuff. And so it's in Nevada, and it's like got up to like 90 some degrees that day. So it went from like a really fast course where you could probably run, like if I had a really good performance there, similar to some of my fastest hundreds, I'm probably breaking 12 hours. But not in 90, 95 degrees. So, but there were some fast runners there that year, and it was just like, all right, we kind of had a group there, and I sort of had this point where there was maybe a little bit of turbulence with a couple of the guys. So I'm like, okay, here's my chance to really put a big gap and just like make it set to like, all right, you're not only gonna have to manage that issue you just had, but now you're gonna have to make up a bunch of time too, and just give them one more challenge to maybe have to deal with. And it worked really well. I ended up winning, but I mean, it was a really painful last 20 miles, and they were very slow relative to the rest of the day. So like, could I have, if I was just out there time trialing, I guess, then maybe I go a little slower and I don't make that move at 50K in the heat. I stay a little more conservative and then save myself a bit at the back end. But, that maybe doesn't get me the win, because maybe that keeps one of those guys in it, and then they sit on me for a while, they catch up, and we both end up running faster, but I get second instead. So there is that interesting aspect that kind of comes into it now too, where it's not always a race course of the fastest time you could possibly do. You have to also consider what everyone else is doing out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, not everybody can have the patience and
Right.
the
Yeah.
wisdom of Courtney, who will will, will start slow and then sweep or wouldn't say slow, but she'll
For
start nice
her.
and
Yeah.
consistent pace and hold that throughout wherever everybody run up, and then she'll
Yeah.
take them all from behind. Uh, yeah, I the way I saw it with that race is like there are guys here who, if I allow them to hide, if I allow them to run a conservative race, they probably
Hmm.
have a faster finish than me. Like, just on paper, they are a faster runner than me. But with particular like reference to the Japanese guys, I knew that most of those guys had only
Hmm.
been in country 2 days. It was hot as heck in New Zealand because like it's the middle of summer, and they were coming from Japanese winter. So effectively, they're going from cold to hot, and they've had no time to acclimate. Yeah, you're a faster runner than me, but you're going to
Hmm.
really hate this warm day. And so I figured, well, if I just hammer you and force you to run fast, you're probably going to break. And I had it picked prior to the race that it was going to be like me and two elite Japanese runners, first, second, and third on the podium, uh, because the Japanese runners were the guys who actually met my call, met my challenge, and pushed hard in the heat of the day. Uh, None of them even finished in the top five because they had just really, really got burnt out and cooked on that hot New Zealand day on these open forestry roads.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fun thing about ultramarathoning too, is you get all sorts of different variables that pay massive consequence if you don't manage them the right way. So it makes it fun. It's not just who's fastest on paper all the time. Um, yeah, like what are you doing differently in training getting ready for a race like that versus the backyard stuff? Is there anything specific that you're really kind of diverging from one or the other on?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I do anything typically too different from anyone training for any particular distance. Really, like I think the running equation is pretty simple. Like around about 100 miles a week. Early in the week, you might do some like VO2 max type intensity stuff, and then later in the week do some lactate threshold intensity, uh, and that's kind of what got me to from being good to being pretty competitive on a global setting. Is just good consistent weeks at 100 miles or roundabouts with some speed in there. Uh, Leading into Tarawera, I guess for maybe 4 to 6 months leading into that, I had tried to tweak the equation a little bit. I was doing a lot of experimentation on myself and seeing like how much I could handle, and so I was doing a lot a lot more fast stuff, like top end fast type things, and then trying to increase the volume of that within the week. So I was going from about 100 miles or 160 k's up to, I think I peaked in around like 195 kilometers per week in the lead up to Tarawera. But then in that period of time, I was doing like maybe 40 kilometers of that week, or yeah, nearly
Hmm.
26 miles of that week at like VO2 max threshold intensity, and it was maybe a little bit too much. It was definitely too much because I was running like a lot of intervals and a lot of sustained intervals in the 220 to 230 per kilometer zone, and yeah, too much, too fast. Cranked my equation way too hard. As a result, uh, neither of my adductors or my rectus abdominis, my six pack, are attached to the
Yeah.
bone right now. So I really, I really slammed the structure, but it's slowly on the mend right now. But yeah, typically I would like to be around that 100 miles a week. I did an interesting training block this time last year because I just had some free time. I didn't have a whole heap of races on, and I was just trying to. I knew I was fast, and I knew I could race well, but I wanted to galvanize my resolve, make the top 2 inches that little bit stronger. And so I did a month of
Hmm.
nearly 200-mile weeks. So like 300, 301, 305, and then like 326 or something kilometer weeks. And I knew that I probably wasn't going to get any, I was going to get physical gain from it, but like I was definitely probably going to hurt myself in a way, but I wanted to give myself the opportunity to fail and then carry on, because that's a lot of what you're exposed to in the backyard. Is you get so many opportunities
Yeah.
to choose to stop. Like there's no one keeping you out there, and so yeah, having that little bit in your head, just keep pushing, keep attacking, like finish the job. That's something that's quite important in the backyard, and probably in any multi-day race, like 6 days or 1,000 miles or whatever. Like you need to have it within you to just stay disciplined and finish the job that you started.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes kind of a mindset to some degree. Yeah. I think what I usually gravitate towards when it comes to ultra marathon training methodology is pretty similar to what you described. It's like, I think step one is just become a better runner and work on some of those kind of like what you said, simple processes of just becoming a better runner, like get your volume up to a sustainable max, have some short interval VO2 max, some long interval threshold stuff in there, like a more basic long run, and spend some time doing that. And then once you kind of get a lot out of that, if you have the right timeline, then now you can use maybe the last 6 to 8 weeks to sort of get a little more specific to whatever it is you're doing, whether that be a 100-miler, a backyard, or a 6-day, and then just carry that really good fitness and apply it to the very specifics that you'll be doing at a little bit more, go from like building the runner to maintaining the runner, and then use that extra that you have from only having to maintain versus develop to apply to, maybe some longer sessions or course specific terrain, or maybe with a backyard, even doing some simulations. I don't know how valuable that would be necessarily for someone who's done a few of them like you, but maybe someone who's new would benefit from something like that.
Just a quick reminder, Maui Nui venison is one of my favorite protein sources. The reason, they have balanced an invasive species, the axis deer, that is devastating to the Maui habitat if not kept in check, all while providing some of the most nutrient-dense meat source you will find. Consider letting them know that you heard of them from me by taking a look at their website at mauinuivenison.com/bitter. You can also check out the full description of how I use Maui Nui venison at the end of the episode.
Oh no, 100%. Simulations are key. Like if I have a runner that I'm coaching and like backyards are on the agenda, if they haven't done a backyard previously, like I'll send them out like maybe a month or 6 weeks before, and I'll just say, set up in your garage, create a 6.7 kilometer loop from your garage, and you're going to run a 6 hour or an 8 hour simulation. Like you haven't run through the dark before, cool. Like we'll do 4 hours before sunset, and then we'll do 4 hours after sunset, and then that way you'll just get to like test your systems and your processes, and test getting out of the chair even when you don't want to get out of the chair, test eating on the hour every hour at maybe volumes that they've never experienced before.
Yeah, I love it. I think it, because you get a little bit of that debate in the alternate community between like, do you do like these ultra specific training sessions, or do you just like, train like a marathoner or train like a typical runner? And I always think like, well, why are we picking between them? Like maybe train like a regular runner, but give yourself the right timeline so you can do some specific stuff too. And then I always think like whenever you have two polarizing opinions, there's probably some middle ground, and then it's just like, how do you structure a way to accommodate both of them to a degree where you're getting the benefits with maybe out the downsides? Yeah, that's just kind of been my approach too. So
No, 100%. I think, I mean, my look at it is running trains running. And like, if you run a decent volume with some decent structure for a period of time, like you're going to get better at running from pretty much every distance, from like, I don't know, at least if it's longer than 800 meters.
Yeah.
So like longer than a sprint, right through to 100 miles, right through to backyard ultras. Like you make your cardiovascular system more efficient, you make your legs nice and strong, and you just get comfortable running good distances at time and being in, I don't know, a level of discomfort. Like you're going to get better, and you're going to go further, and you're going to be better at all of these things. So yeah, specificity, running is specific to running. So
yeah,
I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, and you're not doing a lot of walking when you're doing 38-minute
yards either. So
No, no, I think I worked it out. You're doing like, I don't know, high
Mm.
5 minute per kilometer loop. So like maybe is that 8 minutes per mile or something?
Yeah, right about. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Are you doing it? I mean, I'm curious because like when you're out there for that long and you're eating as much as you have to eat to do that, is there any aspects to your training where you're like, all right, I'm gonna start eating a lot of these types of food products in my day to day, especially on the solid food side of things? Or is there anything specific you do structuring your diet to accommodate this type of racing you're doing?
Uh, I think having a good relationship with food is pretty pivotal. Like if you're pretty vanilla with your eating from the get go, then that's immediately going to limit you with how many options you have to eat during the race. So immediately, like
Hmm.
you're not good at eating. You've got to be good at eating. You've got to be a hungry athlete feeding yourself on a daily basis. Uh, I think it's I think it's very key as you get closer to these races to obviously be like eating whilst you're training, but also be training at a decent volume that your metabolism is fast enough to be uh, to be
Hmm.
absorbing all of this food, doing its job. Because I've definitely found that as I've maybe rolled the dice with my racing and had races just like way closer than is sensible, like a 400-mile backyard ultra one weekend, and then 9 days later a
Yeah.
200-mile backyard ultra, and yeah, that's that's silly. But also, like if you're recovering from one race, I find your metabolism like definitely slows down, and then say if you're, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks later trying to do another one, but you've had, I don't know, a month of recovery or close enough to it where you haven't been doing much, your metabolism's been slowing down, and you've only had a small amount of time like getting back on the horse and getting your metabolism moving again. I find that you get into the second race,
Hmm.
and you're not that hungry. You're not used to eating decent volumes, or at least like if you're running 100-mile plus weeks, you're eating a pretty good volume. Like
You're eating a lot. Yeah.
yeah, if you're
Yeah.
doing like, it's like you're hungry, like your body
Hmm.
wants the fuel, and so you're used to it, and you hold that going into the race. So that's pretty key.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Like when you think about it, yeah, if you're kind of going from one event to the next in a long enough timeline where you're recovered but not necessarily training in between in a high capacity, yeah, you're probably eating much less and therefore not exposing your digestive system to the same amount of rigor that it's maybe going to have to tolerate. I'm not 100% sure like where the research stands on this or how like strong it is, but I remember hearing after a race too where if you do like a really tough race that requires a lot of fueling and just a lot of like breakdown, that it can disturb your kind of gut biome for sometimes up to a month afterwards. So
Mm.
like if you're doing like a hard race and then 3 weeks later doing another one, you could sort of rinse and repeat the same fueling strategy and get a different digested type of experience because you've sort of messed with your biome a little bit with that. I think a lot of that stuff is maybe in the world of we're learning a lot still about it. So I don't know to how much someone should take that and be like, oh, I better never do this. Or, but maybe if someone's had that kind of cycle happen a bunch of times where when they wait longer, they have good digestion, and when they don't, they have it. Could be a clue for them. But it's interesting stuff when you get into the world of essentially competitive running and competitive eating.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like you, like me, we've all had some GI distress. One thing that I've I guess I've increasingly put into my systems and my processes around these big long races is like getting the gut working again, or even getting the gut working during the races. Like I'll be having
Hmm.
probiotics during the race, so whilst I'm slamming the system with just like all this crazy acidic gels and electrolyte powders, like I'm actually and probably stripping or disturbing that biome is actually like trying to throw some
Yeah.
throw some good bacteria in there. So yeah, it's doing its job and not too depleted afterwards, and then also trying to get it back online as quickly as I can after the race.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting stuff when you get into it, the different things that you can play around with to keep that gut processing everything properly. But cool, man. Well, Sam, it's been awesome. What do you got? I know you said you were dealing with a little bit of an injury here, but what do you got coming up next if things play out the way you want, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think the injury is like kind of a blessing in disguise, or at least I'm trying to frame it that way, because otherwise I would have been lining up for Ultra Trail Australia next month in May, and hitting their inaugural 100-mile race. And because I've won Kosciuszko and Tarawera in the last number of months, this would be like the Triple Crown. Like this is the last of the three Oceania 100-mile races under UTMB, and it would be really nice to smash that on its first time and get that Triple Crown. But at the same time, even if I was in like perfect health, throwing down a really hard 100-mile race and then recovering in 5 weeks to then go and attempt a world record in the backyard ultra at Deep Cow Gully, it's even at full health,
Asking a lot.
It's hard, and I've done that kind of thing before, and I know what it's like, because you spend like 2 or 3 weeks recovering, and then you start running again, only to have to taper into the next one, and so you're not primed, and you've already got some like residual stuff going on in the structural system. So I'd say I'll probably just go over to Ultra Trail Australia and crew/pace a number of my runners that are doing that, and go there for the festival, and then the priority will be going to Dead Cow Gully in June and racing with Harvey Lewis and Phil Gore and Marion Gerrits and everybody else who's turning up, and then going for that world record and kind of staking my claim and taking it for myself. I want to hit 150 loops, which will be just over 1,000 kilometers. It'll start on the Saturday morning, and that would finish it on, I think, around lunchtime on the Friday. And that's been my big goal for more than 2 years, is to have that world record and have that number one spot in Backyard Ultra. So I think focus on that priority and kind of sweep Ultra Trail Australia to the side, because that's kind of been like a recent goal. Like it's only been possible because I miraculously won the Kosci 100 mile and the Tarawera 100 mile. And so I was like, oh, why not win all three? So that's only been a goal for maybe 2 months, but that goal, it could severely derail the one that I've been working on for a good couple of years. So I think that's where it's at. Go attack Dead Cow Gully, get the world record, have a couple months to recover and train, go into UTMB. I've got the 173.
Yeah.
The big boy for the first time this year. So that'll be fun. I've found the last couple of years that I'm quite often doing races over and over again, and I'm starting to lose the novelty, because I'm a repeat offender. Yeah, it's quite exciting to be going to UTMB just for the fact that I've never raced there before, so
different.
It should be fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you got an exciting year, even minus 100 miler. I think you're probably smart with that decision to keep your eye on the prize of what you've been thinking about for the last couple of years, and don't tempt fate too much with it. But I mean, you've got me excited to follow along on that one. It was a lot of fun to watch some of the updates with the last throwdown you all had with it, and I'm sure this one will be no less exciting.
I think this year is going to be pretty crazy. Yeah. If last time was anything to go by, this time is going to be even wilder.
Yeah, right on. Well, I'm excited. Sam, where can people find you online, websites, social channels, or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'm most active on Instagram, and my handle's Sam Harvey _Cloudlander. And then my website is samharveyultra.com. But yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram if anyone wants to follow and flick me a message, and yeah.
Right on. Perfect. I'll make sure I put that stuff in the show notes too, so listeners can click on over and see what you're up to. But I really appreciate the time, Sam. It's been awesome to hear about the stuff you've been up to, get a little more insight in kind of the backyard stuff, and I'll be rooting for you for the world record, and then hopefully a big throwdown at UTMB as well. Sounds like a heck of a year coming up.
Yeah, bro. No, it should be quite exciting. It's been an exponential career pathway thus far, and yeah, hopefully I can just hold that momentum.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Sam.
Cheers, Zach.
Thanks for sticking around and listening to how I use the show sponsors. Maui Nui Venison is a product I discovered last year. What caught my eye was their quality and business model. They have paired the need to manage an invasive species with providing some of the most nutrient-dense meat you will find. The axis deer arrived in Maui in single digits but grew fast and have damaged the local ecosystem, and if left unchecked are projected to reach up to 200,000 in number in future years. Maui Nui decided to solve this problem and minimize waste. Axis deer meat provides 43% of your daily value of protein in just 107 calories and boasts a 1.5 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, which is the most balanced ratio of any red meat. This same 107 calories provides 22% of your daily value of vitamins and 37% of your daily value of minerals. They have a wide range of products including ground venison, leg medallions, rib chops, strip loin fillets, and loin chops. They also make a beef stick that includes an option with organ meats, which makes a perfect protein-packed snack that I will usually have in the afternoon before a strength session. I've also been enjoying the ground venison for dinner, usually paired with steamed vegetables or a sweet potato. You can find a bunch of recipes and ways to prepare their products on their website at mauinuivenison.com. Element Electrolytes is my go-to electrolyte supplement. Based on my electrolyte loss rate of 614 milligrams per liter, I begin my day with half a packet of one of their hot beverage flavors with my morning coffee. I rotate through all of them, but my favorite at the moment is the chocolate mint. Later in the day, I have been having either a packet of their watermelon flavor or a can of Element Sparkling, which is their carbonated electrolyte drink. I usually have the black cherry lime or watermelon flavor for those. If you are curious about how to dial in your own fluid and electrolyte setup, check out episode 300 of this podcast, where I dive into some of the things you can do at home to gauge how much fluid and electrolytes you may need. A free sample pack with your first purchase can be found at drinklmnt.com/HPO. Delta G ketones is the best researched exogenous ketone supplement on the market. The research on exogenous ketones is constantly evolving. Delta G is responsible for much of it, hosting 50-plus published studies and 20-plus ongoing studies, and have received DARPA grants designed for special forces. Delta G uses ketone esters, which is unmatched in raising blood ketone levels when matched per gram. The best use case, as the evidence currently stands, is as a post-workout supplement for better recovery and or during longer, lower-intensity sessions to help with mental focus. For this reason, I will have a bottle of Delta G Performance, that's the little blue bottle, after my biggest workouts for the week and during long-run training sessions once I have been out running for about 45 to 60 minutes. Head over to deltagketones.com and enter BITTER20 for 20% off your next purchase. Curranz, which is spelled Curranz, is a pre-workout supplement that I started using this year based on the evidence that it can help improve blood flow, allowing for improved muscle oxygenation, which can potentially enhance endurance performance. It also can increase fat oxidation, reduce muscle damage, and delay fatigue. Black currants are rich in anthocyanins, a type of antioxidants which may contribute to their health benefits. The research suggests benefits can be seen after a week of usage pre-exercise. I take 2 capsules of currants before each morning training session. During longer races, I will be taking an extra 2 capsules every 4 hours. Currants has been used for lots of the research on black currants, so be sure to head over to curranzusa.com, that's CURRANZUSA.com, to check them out and the latest studies. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Human Performance Outliers podcast with Zach Bitter.